I didn't press the button. Okay, so in order to solve for the roots of the zeros, you have to have it set equal to 0 or equal to y. And if you set it equal to y, you still have to make the y be 0 because you're finding x-intercepts. Whenever you look for x-intercepts or roots or zeros, y equals 0. And you have to have everything to one side in order to solve it by factoring or to solve in general at any point in time. Everything has to be equal to 0. So now I factor this. On Friday, we just factored. Now we're going to solve by factoring. So we have an extra step. So what times what equals 1 times 25, 25, and what plus what equals negative 10? Negative 5 and negative 5. Now I can go straight to brackets because I can do product sum straight to brackets because I have a 1 in front of the x squared. If I didn't have a 1 in front of the x squared, I'd have to do decomp. So I have x minus 5 and x minus 5. Technically, you have x minus 5 squared. Now, if I were to factor, I'd be done, right? But it says to solve by factoring. So now I need to solve each of those factors because each of those factors is a linear factor. Actually, each of those is a line. X minus 5 is a line, right? So we're going to take those linear factors and we're going to solve them. So we have x minus 5 equals 0, and we have x minus 5 equals 0. When we solve them out, are we going to have a different number? You could, but not for this one. This one we're going to get the same thing. You're right. So I have to solve for x. So I'm going to add 5. And I get x equals 5. And then I'm going to add 5. And I get x equals 5. Do I have to state it twice? No. Your solution is just x equals 5. And if you want, you can say multiplicity. This is for next year, but we're going to do it anyways this year. Multiplicity 2. What that means is you have 2 roots there. There just happen to be the exact same one. If it's multiplicity 1, you don't have to write it. It's only when you have more than one root that's the same. Okay? Yeah. You bet. Okay, B. We're solving this one. X squared equals 16. So you could square root it, but if it's solving by factoring, what I would suggest you always do, and whenever it says solving, what I would suggest you always do is get it equal to 0. This is the only one that you wouldn't have to be able to get it equal to 0, but if you always just get it equal to 0, it doesn't matter what way I ask you to solve, you'll be able to solve. So I'm going to subtract the 16 over. And I'm going to get x squared minus 16 equals 0. Do you remember how to factor x squared minus 16? Yeah. If you take the square root of both, you're going to get actually a difference of squares. There's a subtraction sign, so it's a difference, and both of these are perfect squares. So if I take the square root of x squared, I get x. If I take the square root of 16, I get 4. And now I'm going to get 2 factors. X in the front of each of the brackets and 4 at the back of each of the brackets. And then my signs just have to be different. If my signs are the same and I FOILed them back together, I would get a middle term. And I don't have a middle term. I just have x squared minus 16. So I have to use opposite signs so that when I FOIL this, I'm going to get a negative 4x and a positive 4x, and then they're going to cancel. Yeah? You could, but only in this case. So I wanted to show it this way, because if I asked you to solve like quadratic formula or completing the square, which you don't know how to do yet, you'd have to have it equal to 0 anyways. So if whenever it says solve, you just get it equal to 0, your life will always be better. So we have x plus 4 equals 0, and we have x minus 4 equals 0. So for this one, I'm going to subtract the 4 over. I'm going to get x equals negative 4. And then I'm going to add the 4 over. And I'm going to get x equals positive 4. Now, you can leave them separate like that, but they'll probably put them together as this. X equals plus or minus 4. If you left them separate, you wouldn't be wrong. So do you see there's literally just one extra step? You just take your solution, set them each equal to 0, and solve. So as long as you can factor, it's really easy. If you can't factor, this is impossible because you won't get the factors and you won't be able to solve it. So try this one on your own. This one's decomp. 3x squared minus 2x minus 8. 3x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Solve it. Okay, so we say what times what equals 3 times negative 8. We always multiply the front by the back, okay? So negative 24. Even if it's a 1, you did that. And then what plus what equals our middle term? Negative 2. So we're going to get negative 6 and positive 4. And we can check them. Negative 6 times positive 4 is negative 24. That's good. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. That's good. Then at least if you did the wrong sign, you'll catch yourself. Okay? Now I can't just go x minus 6, x plus 4. You cannot do that right now. Do not do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. We do not have a 1 in the front, right? So we have to do decomp. So we're going to replace this minus 2x with a negative 6x plus 4x, because negative 6x plus 4x is actually equal to negative 2x. So we can take that negative 2x and we can huck it out and we can replace it with 2 terms. The reason why we do that is then we have 4 terms and then we can do grouping, right? So this first term is going to stay, 3x squared. The middle term is going to become negative 6x plus 4x. And the minus 8 is going to stay because I didn't replace anything there, right? Then we're going to group. Could I have went 4x minus 6x? Yes. Would that make the answer wrong? No. You would just get a different factor that you would pull out, and then what was left over would be just the other factor. But you'll still get the same factors ultimately in the end. Okay, same 2 factors. So we can take out a 3 and an x, and we're left with x minus 2. And then you can take out a plus 4, and you're left with x minus 2. Now we say, what can we take out of here and out of here? Had you done it the other way around, had you switched the 6x and the 4x, in these brackets would be 3x plus 4. Okay, that's all that would be different. You would just get the other factor in the bracket. So now I have to take out an x minus 2 out of both of them. And then what's left over is 3x plus 4. So I get x minus 2 equals 0, and 3x plus 4 equals 0. Add the 2. X equals 2. And then this one, I'm going to have to subtract the 4 over first. 3x equals negative 4. And then divide by 3. X equals negative 4 over 3. Okay? So the hardest part of this is not solving. The hardest part of this is factoring. If you can't factor, you can't do the question. If you can factor, the question's really easy, right? The hardest part is factoring. So this is the homework, and then we're going to move on. So page, just continuation from Friday. Page 230, number